You're listening to the podcast Coffee with Mike and Julie, Libertarians Talk Psychology. This is current commentary from an MBA businessman and a PhD psychologist.
Look what they done to my song, Ma.
I was quite skeptical to watch the movie Barbie, but I had to admit that I was delighted with it. And so I went to look at how it did on Rotten Tomatoes, and it did great. It was in the 80s for both the audience and the critics. But the real winner is the amount of money it's making worldwide. I mean, I was blown away by it. I think it cost over, somewhere 300 million plus to make, but it made $1.5 billion worldwide. So it was a marketing genius.
What entertained me was I passed through the room and saw that you were watching the movie Barbie. And in my mind, I was being kind of superior. My God, my wife is watching a Barbie movie.
I know. I kind of felt bad watching it too.
You felt bad when I passed through the room. Oh shit! He caught me watching a really
I didn't
low-level movie.
No, I couldn't, because I watch a lot of stuff.
But I missed the very beginning of it because of that. But then a couple of things kind of caught my interest. And damn, I sat down and watched the rest of the movie with you. That was a good movie.
Well, the thing about the movie, of course, it's fantasy. There's Barbieland, and it is an alternate universe where the dolls have consciousness, awareness, and the story follows the Barbie. And, the thing about the movie, let me just say this up front, why it's important to libertarians is because it's a movie about personal liberty.
Yeah.
It's a movie about personal awareness, consciousness, and liberty, and how your liberty and power affects other people's liberty and power.
And you and I love that stuff. To any example of individual freedom being the right path, we love that stuff. I never get tired of it.
To say why the movie is so popular with the audience, it's full of satire and irony and great jokes. I mean, it is chock full of the funniest stuff. And one of the ones I appreciate most is the scene. I mean, I'm going to tell a little bit about the plot, but the scene where the mansplaining is just gratifying to me, because I have dealt with mansplaining my whole life, deal with it on a daily basis. I deal with it from
the only man you're around on a daily basis is me.
No, I have colleagues I talk to on the phone, and they're just totally willing to mansplain me. And it's like I've had enough mansplaining in my whole life to be enough. I've had enough. But they make such a great joke out of it. It's like, finally, somebody sees how pervasive mansplaining is.
And it probably won't surprise you to know that I don't even remember what part of the movie you could be talking about.
Well, I will touch on this later, how men are triggered. So here I was reading different critiques of the movie, and I like to follow the critical drinker because he's really good on the superhero movies.
He or she?
Huh?
He or she. Critical drinker is a he or a she?
It's a he.
Okay.
Can you think of a woman that would call herself the critical drinker?
I don't know.
Okay. But he hates the movie, and his followers really were triggered by it. And what they're triggered by, let me just give the overview of the movie, which is a fantasy using alternate universes to make a point. A couple of things that are seriously negative is where the little girls at the beginning of the movie destroy their baby dolls. Oh. I mean, I do think that was very negative.
And I miss
maybe
that.
It was meant to be negative.
I miss that part of the show.
Nowhere in the movie does it. It's so subtle. Everything is so subtle. You don't know what the writer is trying to shove down your throat or missed herself. It's an art form. I mean, it's a piece of art. But the fact that the Barbie doll, in a way, not totally, but replaced the baby doll in the boomers. This is the boomers. Right. And they make that clear in the movie, too, that this has to do with the women that are boomers are perhaps a generation later. The baby doll was replaced by the Barbie doll, which the Barbie doll is a sex symbol.
Oh, yeah. All you have to do is...
She's bone thin.
Right.
They make this thing where...
Big boobs.
in the movie, her feet are perpetually in a high heel position, and she goes flat feet and gets cellulite.
And panics. She panics because
she
her
panics. Feet. I know I'm kind of giving away. The weird Barbie says you can go to the real world and solve this, or you can stay here and get cellulite. And Barbie says, no cellulite, no cellulite. I have to go to the real world. Okay, so let me just give the outline of the movie. But really, it's a must-see movie.
I think so.
It's a must-see movie, but don't take it seriously. It's a satire. It's a satire loaded with irony, and everything is questionable because it's satire.
You and I were talking about this. You were looking at some of the comments, and some of these people are kind of offended by the jokes in the movie. And of course, we're commenting, this is like what comedians are dealing with nowadays.
Yes.
Is that comedians are getting censored.
People are triggered.
People are triggered, and it's a joke.
Yeah, it's meant to be a joke. It's uncovering the real message, and you're going with this superficial message. You're being triggered by the superficial message. This is a joke for you to be amused by, but also to make you thoughtful.
Yeah.
The movie taken as a way to be thoughtful. I mean, it should be used in college classes and then, discussed about the meaning, because some of the meaning is so subtle you don't really know what the author intended.
Right. It would be easy to ignore the subtle messages. It would be easy to just
take it as superficial.
Just discard it as a kid's movie. It would be easy to do that. But they're talking about some important, subtle issues between males and females, and in-group and out-group, and of course, real world and fantasy world, too.
Well,
it was good.
It's a sci-fi thing. It's pretty interesting. But so the story is Barbie is in Barbieland, which is a perfect land, and Barbie rules there. All the dolls are named. They have consciousness. I don't know how they deal with this.
And the Barbies, in other words, the females, are the dominant force in Barbieland.
Well, it's Barbieland. Yeah. I mean, this is when you see the males comment, it's not Ken land, it's Barbieland, and the Barbie doll rules. And so they make that really clear up in the beginning. Everything is perfect. Barbie looks perfect. Everything is perfect. All the dolls are named Barbie. Everybody, hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie. Good morning, Barbie. How are you today, Barbie? I mean, it's just hilarious. Okay. And so it's set up that Barbie is perfect and nothing ever changes. It's a perfect fantasy life. And she's very happy being a doll in her dolliness. The weird Barbie says dolliness, humanness and dolliness. Okay. So Ken, who Mattel created as a potential partner for Barbie, the narrator says in the beginning that every day is perfect for Barbie and she's happy every day. Ken is happy only if Barbie looks at him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You just remember that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've forgotten that. But I can tell you, as a guy, I spent my whole young man life trying to get some young woman to look at.
Well, that's the thing about the movie. It's a piece of art. Things keep popping into your mind about that. I mean, there's some truth to this depiction of men. Well, it's like Richard Dawkins says in his book, The Selfish Gene. To men, women are a resource, but also men are dependent on women.
Yeah.
Of course, women, they don't make the point that women are dependent on men. Well, let me go back to the theme of the movie. So Barbie's going along fine in this perfect world, this plastic world. And, the metaphors of plastic are everywhere. And the clothing they just do it beautifully. The funniness of it all. And she says they're doing a disco dance. She says, does anyone ever think of dying? And everything stops. Dead still. And everybody looks at her like, oh my God, what are you saying? And she said, dying to dance.
That's right.
Barbie starts having feelings of death and dying, an existential crisis.
Mortality.
And so she has to eventually, and her feet go flat, And she gets a little bit of cellulite, apparently. I don't know. I didn't see it, but anyway.
I didn't see any cellulite.
You're not old Margot Robbie. But she has to go to the wise woman, who is the weird Barbie. I don't know if Mattel has a weird Barbie, but that would have been a good doll. People would have bought the weird doll, the Barbie. So I'm thinking maybe they do have a weird Barbie. So the weird Barbie tells her that her human that's playing with her is sad and depressed, and she has to go to the real world, find the human, and fix it, or she's stuck. So the story begins there. Barbie goes to the real world, and Ken hitches a ride with her. And man, the shit hits the fan. Ken is thrown into a world where men are dominant. Now, I didn't think the movie made that really a point.
Oh, I thought they did.
Men are equal, are dominant. The thing about the real world being patriarchal, I didn't think they made that clear.
I thought they did, but go ahead.
The Mattel board is all men, so they made it a little bit. Okay. So Barbie and Ken have to go through this situation, and I don't want to give too much away in case somebody has. She finds the girl and her mother that have the doll that Barbie has to fix. Ken goes back to the Barbieland and takes over the government with his horses. The stuff is so hilarious.
And the other Kens, all
the other Kens. So Barbie and the mother and daughter go back to Barbieland, and then they have to be confronted with taking back the government in Barbieland from Ken. Is that enough of the plot to go through?
I don't know.
It all works out.
It isn't as if the movie's complicated or anything.
Well, my point is it is very complicated.
Oh, okay.
It's very complicated. But the Kens are definitely subordinates. Whether they're suppressed or not is a question. Definitely the difference between oppression and self-subjugation.
Well, sorry, I thought you were headed here, but the thing that I was fascinated with in the movie is they did a good job of showing everyone's resistance to individual freedom.
Yes.
Both the males and the females.
That's a good point. So, I mean, this is why the movie is thought-provoking, but it doesn't really give you an answer. It's just like a really good piece of art. You don't know. You don't really know. But Barbieland is about the plastic existence of perfection and the idea that the Barbies are definitely in power, but they're cheerfully in power. And they're not mean to Ken. They just have all the power.
Yeah.
But is perfection, it brings up the question, is perfection and happiness the goal? And the story has an answer to that, too. The story to the humans did Barbie, the idea of Mattel's Barbie. And Mattel is just part of this story. I don't know if Mattel is, I just thought it was brilliant marketing and also social commentary for them to be part of this. But there's a talk by the mother during the movie about the pressures, the human mother, about the pressures of being a female. And of course, that's a pivotal point in Barbie's journey about you're expected to be perfect, you're expected to be beautiful, you're expected to be a good mother, you're expected to be a career woman, you're expected to do this and that and that. Well, let me just say as a boomers woman, that resonates. They did this really well. It wasn't the teenager who was on the hero's journey, it was her mother. In the story, the human mother.
Okay, right.
Okay, so you got all of that beautiful psychological message going every which way. And then at one point, which I thought the Ken story was reflective of the female journey in the real world more than Ken's journey in Barbieland. But he says to Barbie, "You failed me." Do you remember that story? The actor Ryan Gosling did a great job.
Ryan Gosling. That's okay. Go ahead. Ryan something.
Gosling.
Gosling.
Oh, Gosling. That's right. You're right. You mansplained me correctly.
Every now and then you need a little mansplaining.
Well, that's the issue. It never bothers me that much when someone's actually correcting me. It bothers me when they're telling me what I already know and what I just said. But he does that scene. She says, "I failed something." And he goes, "You failed me." And it really is heartfelt. And you really do sympathize with Ken's journey. I mean, they really do pull at your heartstrings for his journey, having to try to somehow attract Barbie and never quite getting anything from her, of true intimacy because she's a plastic doll without genitals.
But at Barbieland, I'm sorry, this brings up the memory in the show of when they're on the beach and he's going to play the guitar. And he plays the guitar. And of course, the whole point is she is going to adore whatever he does.
Yeah.
So she does a great job of being adoring as he's sitting there playing the guitar. And in the show, they make it clear that he plays the guitar for 4 hours.
4 hours later.
And they show her smiling and adoring everything he's doing.
He has that great line. He says, I want to play the guitar at you.
At you.
Well, the other thing that I'm going to get to the comments, and then I get wrap up by talking about the libertarian concepts that are hidden in the story. But the concepts by the men on Critical Drinker that were triggered, one of them said that the fact that the Barbies won by being emotionally and sexually manipulative of the Kens is, to me, the most ironical of this film. I think that's a great comment, but that refers to the fact that the Barbies back in Barbieland became enamored with the Kens. And all of a sudden the power shifted because the Kens, but the female Barbie dolls, were fascinated with the males. Well, women are fascinated with males. Women have female choice, and they're fascinated. The peahen is fascinated with the peacock. And then to retake the government, the other Barbies had to snatch the fascinated Barbies away from the Kens. And in order to do that, they tricked the Kens into explaining chess to another female.
Is that the mansplaining you're talking about?
Well, they tricked the men. Yeah, that's the joke about mansplaining.
Okay.
It's like, tell me how to do this math. Tell me how to play chess. Explain this technology to me. So they were distracting the guys. They were distracting the guys with another female.
They could take his girlfriend and educate her about women's rights.
Go educate a female, and the men just sucked that up. Like, let me go tell this woman how to do something. It was just beautifully played irony. But before we stop, watching the Critical Drinker talk about the film, these guys are triggered by the superficial metaphors and irony of the film. Some of them are really triggered. Like this one,
they're outright angry.
They're pissed off. They're pissed off because Ken didn't have much power in Barbieland. I mean, that's what they're pissed off about, is that the doll Ken, as an adjunct to Barbie in a little girl's fantasy play, doesn't have the right to vote in Barbieland. I mean, they did make it an issue in the real world, but not that big of an issue.
Yeah.
The real world was different, but the patriarchy was not all that terrible in the real world. This guy says the word patriarchy was said more times in this movie than in an average teenage high schooler's Instagram story during Pride Month. Mm-hmm. That's great. The fact that, and then this one I just said, the fact that Barbie's won by being emotionally, sexually manipulative of the Kens is, to me, the most ironical of this film. Then this guy says, honestly, if you described that movie to me and told me Barbie was the main villain and it didn't have a happy ending, I would 100% believe you. If you read these comments, they're triggered by the fact that Ken was subjugated, and he was. He was. And that's part of the story. How did it end? The Barbies took back the Constitution in Barbieland. They manipulated the Kens enough that the Kens didn't have the power at the end of the story. So we don't really know how Barbieland...
Well, I perceived that when both Ken and Barbie recognized individual freedom, that was better for both of them. And
Barbieland became better, yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so that kind of segues us into the conclusion. The thoughtful approach to the movie is that people are subjugated by their own conscious need for perfection and power, the lacking of thoughtfulness and insight, and the robotic, plastic, doll-like behavior, you can be subjugated by yourself. And both Ken and Barbie seem to realize that. They begin to think as human beings, and that the solution to being oppressed is a mixture. There's real oppression going on. The story is about real oppression. And then there's the oppression that comes because you're socially pressured into a role. And that the oppression can be, you can throw off I want to call it pseudo-oppression. You can throw off the pseudo-oppression. And the libertarian philosophy really depends on the individualism and the liberty, the embracing of liberty by the individual, which includes embracing the liberty of other people. The aha is that you get the feeling that the author may believe in the fact that you can't really be free, Barbie, until Ken is also free.
Good point.
That is the fundamental difference between the libertarian philosophy and other philosophies.